Alright, what is up guys, it is Storm back here with another video, and in this one I am bringing you part 63 to Legacy and Naruto story. Now if you want to check this story out for yourself, the link to it will be down in the description below. But before the video begins, if you like the content you're seeing, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I mean, they're all free, so why not? If you want some dope channel merch, the link to that will be down in the description below. And if you want to see more of me, be sure to go check out my other channels and go follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, which will all be linked down below. But without further ado, why don't we just dive right on in. Senju Compound. How long have they been like that? Tobirama asked, gazing into both Naruto and Hinata, who sat on the ground, in a perfect lotus position facing each other. They were looking intently into each other's eyes without making a single movement, not even the slightest of twitches. The odd thing was that they both had dojutsus activated. Naruto had his Mangekyo turned on while Hinata was using her newly awakened eyes. Her light blue eyes clashed against the blood red of the Sharingan. A couple of hours, Itachi replied, giving a side glance to the sitting couple. I see, Tobirama replied flatly, and sat down at the table, his eyes never leaving them. How long do you think it has been for them? He asked, noticing a small drop of sweat running down Naruto's face. Time perception changes between users. In my Tsukuyomi, 1 second in real life means 24 hours inside my Genjutsu world. As for Naruto, I can't but wonder. I'm severely restrained by my chakra levels, unlike him, Itachi replied evenly. But both of them have been going at it for hours. They didn't even have lunch. If he shares the same skills you did with the Tsukuyomi, then both of them have been in there for years, Tobirama said, quickly doing the math in his head. Years and a couple of hours. Tobirama was lost in his thoughts when he heard a groan and noticed Naruto had closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Both Naruto and Hinata stood, popping a few joints for all the time they sat on the ground, stiff as boards. He looked towards Hinata and saw her hair shifting back to her dark blue color. Tobirama looked carefully at Hinata. Her posture seemed different. No, it wasn't different, but that could have been for sitting on the ground for so many hours. His eyes trailed back to Naruto, who was already at the table, munching on anything he could grab. He took a small reed, and felt his chakra levels were near the bottom. Naruto had expended all of his chakra in that speed training session. Tobirama wondered. How long? He asked, narrowing his eyes at Naruto. I didn't just use my chakra, Tobi, Naruto replied with a crooked smile. Tobirama groaned once more at the nickname. Naruto had taken to call him Tobi for short, no matter how many times he reminded Naruto that Tobi was the once mask of Fugaku. We emptied Kurama as well, Naruto explained, and Tobirama's eyes widened ever so slightly. If they used the chakra of a Bichu, then 2 years, Naruto said, and saw Tobirama's jaw drop as well as Itachi's. You've been stuck in your mind for 2 years? Tobirama asked in disbelief. 2 years? That was insane. The amount of chakra required would be staggering. No wonder they drained the Kyuubi. 2 years, 1 month, and 24 days, Hinata informed him while Tobirama just shook his head. What did you do in there for so long? Tobirama asked. Mostly training, Hinata replied, munching happily on an apple. I see, Itachi answered neutrally. Anything we need to know? Nope, Naruto grinned. However, Hashirama is no longer the second strongest in our group, Naruto replied, and Tobirama raised his head, looking at Hinata who looked exactly the same. Then again, for him and Itachi it was only a few hours. Really? Tobirama asked with suspicion. His brother was filled to the brim with chakra, not to mention his wood-style bloodline. Indeed, Hinata answered but said nothing more. Let them wonder, she added in thought. And you? Tobirama asked towards Naruto. What have you been doing in there for 2 years? Preparing for Madara. Next day, Hokage's office. He won't like it, Tsunade commented. She stood next to the windows, hands behind her back as she gazed into the village, the sun coming up in the horizon. I know, Hinata replied softly. How do you know Naruto won't like it? Shizune asked with a frown. She, Hinata, and Tsunade were the only ones in the Hokage's office. Even the Anbu were ordered to leave. What we are trying is dangerous, and Naruto will know it. Hinata answered with a sigh. But he will understand. We just can't progress any further without him. A single sample requires our absolute attention and takes weeks to grow. If we want it ready for the war, we need more time. Or Naruto's abilities, Hinata explained, and waited for Tsunade to answer. Fine, Tsunade sighed in defeat. Just ease him into it. You know how he gets with the whole war and peace thing, Tsunade explained, and Hinata nodded in reply, taking the authorization form from the Hokage. Another thing, Tsunade said, stopping Hinata from leaving the office. Don't take too long. I need you and Kakashi to get ready for the Kage meeting. Hinata frowned at Tsunade's words. You're not taking Naruto? She asked. Things are tense between us and Iwagekure, Tsunade sighed, closing her fists behind her back. Naruto is too proud for his own good. Actually, I think you should reconsider, Hinata replied instantly, making Tsunade turn away from the window and look at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. He and the Tsuchikage are at each other's throats. I can't allow that to happen if we are to be allied in the war, Tsunade informed her. That is why I think you should heavily reconsider not taking Naruto with you. I spent 2 years with him in our minds, and he's humbled quite a bit, Hinata explained. Really? Tsunade asked with amusement. And is that an impartial observation? One thing you should understand about Naruto is that he's never lost before, Hinata began softly. We both had rough times growing up. Naruto pushed himself to his limits every single day to reach the level he is today. It's normal that he takes pride in his abilities since he worked hard for them. Although the early years were hard, Naruto always had a talent for the shinobi arts. He learned jutsus fairly quickly thanks to his eyes, and his taijutsu and genjutsu grew just as easily. The problem with such talent and power was that he never lost a single battle, Hinata said, and Tsunade raised an eyebrow in surprise. He was never once defeated in battle, and he was never outsmarted either. Then came Madara, who kidnapped me right from beneath his nose, and to make things worse, Naruto confined me afterwards. It shook him. It made him feel weak, frail, and hopeless for the first time. I think he learned a lot of humbleness from that, Hinata finished, and explained, and Tsunade remained silent. That certainly explained all the anger he had, Tsunade muttered to herself. She looked up towards her apprentice and mused silently in thought. Alright, Tsunade conceded, shaking her head at the bright smile on the girl's face. One question, though, Tsunade said, and Hinata nodded quite quickly. What exactly were you doing for 2 years in your dreamscapes? Tsunade asked with curiosity. Mostly developing my eyes, so I don't have surprises during the war. Hinata shrugged her shoulders. I had time to think about my researches, and a couple other things. But what you learn, don't you need to train it with your actual body? Tsunade mused out loud. Not really, Hinata replied. Mine and Naruto's bodies are at our physical peak at the moment. The absolute peak of the human body is around 25, so we just have to wait until then. The things I learned in our minds can be easily applied in the real world without placing too much strain on my eyes, Hinata explained, and Tsunade chuckled softly. Care to share? Tsunade asked shrewdly. Apparently, I'm Hamura's transmigrant. Due to Naruto's chakra being injected into my system, it forced my eyes to awaken. Hence the white hair and the bones thing. Hinata shrugged her shoulders. She didn't mind her new eyes, but she was still wrapping her mind about the bones. I see, Tsunade replied, walking towards the chair and leaning backwards. Anyway, get going and come back with them once you're finished, Tsunade said. Hinata bowed and walked out of the office. That girl, Tsunade chuckled. She never ceases to amaze me. Indeed, Shizune giggled in reply. With Naruto. Are you serious? Naruto asked in disbelief, mixed with surprise and shock. He was staring at the scarecrow of a shinobi standing lazily in front of him. Anko, you're marrying Anko. I thought all you had was a fling, he chuckled in disbelief. Now, Naruto. Anko may be a bit eccentric and crazy, twisted, sadistic, and did I mention crazy? Shall I go on? Naruto asked with amusement. I'm a simple man, Naruto. Kakashi sighed and closed his book. I see boobs. I marry them, Kakashi replied, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, good luck then, Naruto said after recovering. You're gonna need it by marrying that crazy woman. Naruto laughed in thought. Both Naruto and Kakashi stiffened slightly, but quickly relaxed when they felt the spike of chakra. They watched as water started swirling in the previous dry ground and Hinata materialized herself in front of them. Hina, Naruto ran up to her and proceeded to whine about Kakashi getting married with Anko. Congratulations, Kakashi-sensei, Hinata said happily, while Kakashi nodded in appreciation unlike certain blondes. Come now, Hinata, we're all jonin'. Kakashi's fine, Kakashi answered, and Hinata nodded before turning towards Naruto. I need your help. Are you busy? Hinata asked, and Naruto shook his head, wondering what Hinata wanted. Good, come with me, Hinata said, and motioned for him to follow. See ya, Kakashi. Hinata bowed slightly as both walked off. Konoha Hospital. So, where are we going? Naruto asked as both of them stepped into the hospital through the front doors. You'll see, Hinata grinned, and Naruto followed, wondering what would require him in the hospital. He always hated hospital. That damn smell of high-powered cleaners. Nonetheless, he followed her. She made her way through the hospital blocks with practiced ease. Soon enough, Hinata turned on a corner that led to a dead end. Naruto raised an eyebrow. She kept walking until she stood but a few feet from the wall. Naruto's jaw dropped when Hinata placed a hand on the wall, and immediately a small seal flared to life, glowing intermittently for a few seconds. Naruto watched as a small outline appeared on the wall, the size of a simple door. Come, Naruto, Hinata said, breaking Naruto from his stupor. Hinata pushed the wall and retreated backwards without much effort, sliding to the side. Naruto stepped into the room with trepidation. Where the hell are we going? Naruto was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice a simple elevator standing in the middle of the room. A single Anbu stood next to the doors in perfect position, arms by the side of his body in straight posture. Where are we? Naruto asked with no concealed curiosity. It was a small miracle he managed to hold it so far. We're nearly there. I'll tell you when we arrive, Hinata replied, and entered the pin code and the doors opened with a swoosh sound. Hinata stepped inside, and Naruto was about to enter as well when the Anbu placed a single arm to stop his movements. Lord Senju does not have clearance to enter this section, the Anbu replied sharply, and Naruto turned to Hinata, who blushed in realization. I'm sorry, here. Hinata stepped out of the elevator and quickly pulled out the form she received from Tsunade. The Anbu looked through the form seconds before it burst into flames and was turned into ash. You may proceed, the Anbu replied neutrally and returned to his posture. Thanks, Naruto replied awkwardly and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed and he turned towards Hinata expectantly. She felt his eyes on her but ignored him. They were nearly there. Naruto could feel the chakra signatures on the surface getting dimmer and dimmer as the elevator continued on downwards. Suddenly, the elevator stopped and Naruto looked forward as the doors opened, and he was blasted with white light. Welcome, Naruto, to Orochimaru's greatest creation, Hinata said, but Naruto was barely able to register her words. There was so much white in front of him. White walls, white lights on the ceiling. Orochimaru. Naruto finally processed Hinata's words. What do you mean? He asked as he was led by Hinata through the halls. Naruto looked through the clear glass walls and saw many tables filled with vials and other equipment. He recognized some of the equipment from the basic knowledge he had of biology. They kept walking and took a sharp right until they entered another section of the place. This room had large tanks filled with some type of liquid. Something was floating inside the tanks, connected by tubes to the exterior. Naruto suddenly stopped and placed a hard hand on Hinata's shoulders. Hinata turned backwards and noticed Naruto's face. Explain, Naruto said more harshly than he intended, but Hinata didn't seem to mind. It seemed that she expected it, in fact. Orochimaru was the founder of all of this, Hinata began, waving her arms. This is a secret division of the League for biological weaponry research. These facilities are perhaps the closest kept secrets in the village. I doubt that even Danzo knew of this place. But with his connections, it's unclear. The structure has living facilities for the active personnel and support staff to reduce the trips to the surface and lower risk of exposure. Remember that little laboratory you found years ago during your D-rank mission? Hinata asked, and Naruto nodded. That was actually an emergency entrance to this place. It would seem Orochimaru had repurposed the location for his own plans. When he was caught, I don't think he had the time to properly clean up everything. That would explain how you found so much, Hinata mused. He may have overstood his boundaries, but he was a genius, and one of the leading minds in genetic engineering. This was his life's work before he went crazy with the whole immortality thing, Hinata explained, and Naruto nodded, following her along the corridors. It was supposed to be a dawn of a new age. All the chakra in the world is meaningless when a simple virus can wipe out a village and leave its wealth intact, Hinata explained. And Naruto was already frowning. Isn't chakra enough? Naruto sighed. Does Konoha really need more weapons? But you're wrong though, Naruto thought sadly. If you understood chakra like I do, you would know that chakra is the only absolute. I understand how you feel, Naruto, Hinata replied softly. But don't forget that this village is the military power of Fire Country, and while Konoha has always had powerful shinobi, We never had the largest armies nor the biggest diversity in bloodlines. However, we always strived in medicine. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised, but I thought shinobi were resistant to viruses and other diseases, Naruto commented out loud. True, Hinata agreed. People with active chakra networks have stronger immune systems, so they don't get sick from standard diseases, but we're still humans, Naruto. Even we get sick and die if the disease is strong enough, Hinata explained, as both of them stopped in front of a door. I still don't see how I can help. My knowledge in genetics is a little rusty, Naruto joked until Hinata pointed forward. Naruto looked at where they stopped in front of a steel door. V-I-R-U-S. Virus. Naruto read the letters on the door. Viral Investigation and Research Unit Section, Hinata informed him as she stepped forward and the doors opened automatically. This way, Hinata called, and Naruto followed, until they stood in front of large cylindrical tanks, very similar to the ones he saw in another section of this place. Is that what I think it is? Naruto asked, observing the white blob floating in the liquid. White Zetsu, Hinata confirmed. Naruto watched the blob in front of him for confirmation. It was indeed a white Zetsu, or at least a few chunks of one. Ever since the Kumo invasion, we've been working on several ways to quickly neutralize them. Actually, that would be a brilliant idea, Naruto replied with a surprised face. Madara's army would be entirely composed by white Zetsu. If we could find a poison or something that would only target them, we could dispatch of this army instantly, Naruto said, and Hinata nodded in reply. There are a few snacks, however, Hinata said, sitting on a nearby chair and powering on the computer and other equipment. Naruto leaned over Hinata to look at the monitor to watch an array of complex symbols and other stuff that had no meaning to him. We are learning more every day, but I have to say that Zetsu clones are one work of art. They are essentially clones of Hashiramas, although their DNA is slightly different since they are not entirely human, Hinata explained, pointing towards a monitor which had a representation of a Zetsu's body. They possess nearly all the strengths of Hashirama. They carry the same powerful life force and his healing abilities as well. They are also heavily in tune with nature, being able to literally merge with any substance, and allowing them to blend in and easily and be virtually undetectable, even for powerful sensors like you and Tobirama, Hinata explained, pointing to several schematics, and Naruto nodded in understanding. They can use wood style, although on a much smaller and weaker scale than Hashirama, thankfully, Hinata said on Naruto's side, rubbing his forehead. I expected the Zetsu clones to be nothing but fodder, Naruto groaned. It would appear that Zetsu clones weren't as weak as expected. The Kumo invasion was an eye-opener. Hinata nodded in agreement and returned to her explanation. Since they aren't exactly human, they do not perform much of our bodily functions. They do not require food or even oxygen. Instead, they draw natural energy for sustenance. Since they draw energy from the earth itself, they do not tire, unlike us. Hinata bit her lip. Hinata replied and stood up, leading Naruto to another table. Their bodies are very durable. Low-level wounds will heal up immediately. To take them down, you need extensive trauma, like decapitating them or blowing them to pieces. What about their offensive abilities? Naruto asked, looking backwards to the floating Zetsu in the tank. Besides the wood style, their offensive abilities are on the weaker side. Their only reliable ability seems being able to absorb chakra, Hinata said, and Naruto frowned at her words. Like my Rinnegan? Not like that. Hinata shook her head. They cannot negate ninjutsu attacks. However, they can latch onto a person and drain their chakra in fairly quickly too if we're not too careful. Naruto nodded, taking particularly attention to store all these little details. So, what do you need me for? I need your Rinnegan abilities. I need you to mature a couple of specimens, so that we can try our creations on them, Hinata said, pointing to several vials in the fridge. They seemed to share the same color, but the labels identified the liquid with different strains. Z-virus? Naruto asked with amusement. Z for Zetsu. Not very original, but it will do. Hinata giggled while Naruto shook his head. He walked up to the tanks and placed a single hand on the glass. The Zetsu parts began shaking and suddenly snapped to their right positions. The leg piece went to the bottom while the head stayed at the top. Small white tendrils burst from the head and quickly latched onto the remaining body parts, pulling the pieces together, mending the flesh back together in one whole body. Yellow eyes snapped open as Naruto removed his hand. The Zetsu snarled, gulping the liquid, but he didn't seem to mind. The Zetsu punched the tank, but the glass didn't even vibrate. Reinforced glass. They're perfectly safe in there, Hinata commented, as she drained the liquid inside the tank. Hinata walked back towards the computer and started typing. Warning. Warning. Naruto heard from the speakers. Z-virus protocol initialized. Dispersing B strain. Naruto turned back to the tank and saw nothing happening. Zetsu was still trying his best to break the glass, until he suddenly stopped and started convulsing in pain. His skin started blistering as Zetsu trashed inside the glass cage, until he collapsed to the bottom, completely still. Hinata was looking at the report from the computer, when the Zetsu opened his eyes and stood up. With a smirk, all the blisters healed, and he began trying to break the glass again. B-strain simulation failure, the system reported. Oh well, Hinata-san stood up. Not like I expected to work on the first try. That would have been too good. Do you know what makes him obey Madara's commands so blindly? Naruto asked with curiosity. Oh, I know that face. Hinata stayed with a smirk. What are you plotting in that devious mind of yours? She asked, watching Naruto remain obvious to her question. I was thinking, what if we could somehow modify this Zetsu, Naruto pointed to the tank behind him, to follow our orders. Then we could simply form our own Zetsu army and pit it against Madara's. And should we lose, we could always make some more, Naruto explained, but Hinata frowned. I don't think it'll work. We just got to work on the Zetsu and I have so much more to find out. I don't think it'd be wise to risk building an army for it to turn against us, Hinata explained. You're right. Anyway, how many clones do you need? Naruto asked, looking at the 4 other tanks. One is enough for now. When I manage to end this one, I'll let you know. In the meantime, we need to get ready for the Kage meeting, Hinata explained, placing her lab coat down. I don't think Granny will let me go, Naruto frowned. No worries. I talked to her and convinced her to give you a second chance, Hinata replied, and Naruto looked up. In a flash, she was next to Hinata, hugging her. Thanks, Hinata, Naruto cheered, spinning her while she laughed. Did I tell you how much I love you? Not today, she pouted. Senju compound. Most of the people living under the roof of the Senju compound were gathered in the living room. Naruto had just geared up and was waiting for Tsunade to arrive, so they could depart for their final meeting before the war. No matter how much time passes, war always finds its way back, Hashirama said sadly, looking down at the floor. All the battles I fought, the union of the clans into villages, and here we go again. This war is different, Naruto replied with a smile. Hashirama looked up with hollowed eyes. There is no point in war, Naruto. You will understand it. Sooner or later, Hashirama sighed. He could already feel the nature weeping for the loss of life that was to come. You're wrong, old man. It's true that most wars are pointless, but this one is special. For the first time since the birth of Chakra, all the clans, all the villages, all shinobi are united against a common enemy. No one wishes to sacrifice their freedom, Naruto said seriously. For the first time in history, we are united for more than greed, more than personal gain. This is for our future. Good speech, Hashirama snickered, but his words were honest. You should relay that message to whoever becomes the commander of the forces on the field. Naruto. Naruto turned to see Kurama approaching the room, followed by his 7 siblings. The only Biju missing was the one still inside B, back in Kumo. That can't be good, Naruto thought with anticipation. We want to fight by your side, Son Goku said, stepping forward and standing next to Kurama. Absolutely not, Tobirama replied sharply. We're going up against Madara. A single glance from his eyes and you become nothing more than puppets. We deserve to fight, Madatabi replied harshly. You are not fighting for your future alone. Should you fail, we will also be enslaved. Naruto, for his part, was silent, pondering what to do. Don't tell me you're considering this, Tobirama asked indiscreetly, turning to look at Naruto. They're right. They deserve to fight for their freedom as well, Naruto replied, and the Biju nodded. However, Naruto continued, stopping any rant, I can't allow you in the battlefield. Tobi's right. It is a chance I cannot take, Naruto replied sadly, while most of the Biju growled in anger. And who are you to stop us? Son Goku growled, his tails waving menacingly. You are not father, he spat. I know, Naruto answered with a small smile. But it is my job to protect you. Son Goku closed his mouth and looked at the floor, but he was still too proud to back down. It would appear they reached an impasse. Sensing the tension growing in the room, Hinata stepped forward. May I offer a compromise? Hinata asked, and everyone turned towards her. Why don't you seal the Biju inside a vessel of their choosing? Hinata offered, and everyone's eyes widened. When a Biju's inside a host, they are not affected by Genjutsu, and this way they can join forces and help in the war. Hinata explained and Naruto nodded, pondering this very seriously. I agree, Madatabi replied instantly and jumping in the air, landing on Hinata's shoulders. I want her, Madatabi purred, while Hinata for her part patted her head in acceptance. I can go with that, Naruto said, and turned towards Son Goku and the others. Will you agree? Son Goku stayed silent for a few moments, as he turned backwards to talk with the remaining 3 Biju, Sanki, Kokuo, and Saiken, since it appeared Madatabi had already agreed and chosen her vessel. They whispered for a few moments until they reached to a consensus. We agree on the condition we are treated fairly and be allowed to roam free. You know that I won't allow anyone to use you purely as weapons of mass destruction. Pick your vessel. If they agree, then I'll seal you and allow you to participate in the war, Naruto explained, and Son Goku nodded. He started walking around the room, snuffing anyone in range. I want your mate, Son Goku said towards Tobirama, who turned stiff as a board. Of all the people in the world, he managed to choose a Kage, Naruto muttered. Inoki is not going to like this one bit, Naruto snickered, thinking back to the old leader. Inoki really wanted the Biju back, and now Naruto is going to steal a Biju that once belonged to Iwa into the Kage of another village. I want you, Aisubu said, walking towards Tobirama. I sense your chakra nature will go along with mine very well, Aisubu explained. Naruto looked at Tobirama for an answer, but the man simply shrugged his shoulders. But Naruto could swear he saw a smile tugging the corner of his lips. And you? Naruto asked, turning towards the remaining Biju, Saiken and Kokuo. I sense we are very much the same, Itachi. I would like to be bonded with you, Kokuo said, much to Itachi's surprise. I thank you for choosing me, Itachi replied and bowed in kind. I want you, Hashirama, Saiken replied meekly. Of course, Hashirama replied joyfully. I guess it's settled, Naruto said, as Tsunade came into the room. I'll seal you after we come back from the meeting. Seal what and who? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at Naruto, who gulped under her gaze. You know, Kurama began, drawing the attention to him. Father said that someday we would all be together. I just never thought it'd be quite like this. Kurama laughed. At the Kage meeting, I apologize for my words during the last meeting, Lord Tsuchikage, Naruto said, bowing his head. Inoki opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. If he was expecting anything from the spawn of the Yellow Flash, this was not that. It certainly wasn't, Inoki thought in mild disbelief, seeing the blonde in front of him. He looked around to see faces of shock and surprise amongst everybody in the room. Did you put him to this? Inoki hissed towards Tsunade, who was also shocked. No, she gasped. I see, Inoki said neutrally, contemplating the young shinobi in front of him. Stop bowing, boy. Show some pride. He snarled suddenly. Naruto rose but kept his face empty, waiting patiently for Inoki's answer. Why did you apologize? Inoki asked, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. I overstood my boundaries during the last meeting. It was not my intention to coerce you to relinquish control over the Biju by force, Naruto replied, looking somewhat downcast. I still have and will always have pride. I bowed, not by lack of it, but as a sign of respect and apology. And where do you stand now about the Biju? Inoki asked, and everyone in the room stiffened, waiting for the response. I'm sorry, but giving you the Biju is not something I will do. Naruto frowned but replied nonetheless. I see, Inoki said, inhaling sharply. Everyone in the room tensed and waited for the old man to blow up once more. We are all shinobi, are we not? Naruto suddenly asked. Why must we force ourselves into endless fighting over land, money, or even power? We could do so much more if we all stood together, Naruto explained seriously. War will only lead to our mutual destruction. I suppose I agree with you on that, Inoki replied, and everyone sighed in relief. I'm old, Naruto. Very old, Inoki said, referring to the blonde by his name for the first time. And I have seen more chaos, blood, and death than even you. The attack of my forces during the last meeting was not my decision. As you know, I was under Madara's influence, so I am partial to blame for that mess. And I extend to you my gratitude for sparing my men, Inoki said, and Naruto smiled, shaking Inoki's extended hand. Good. When this is all over, then we can talk properly, Inoki finished and sat down around the round table. Now, Inoki began, as the bodyguards also stood behind each of the Kage. Let's show that bastard what happens when he messes with us, Inoki snarled, and Tsunade snickered internally. Some things never change, Tsunade thought, casting a side glance at Naruto. She saw Hinata's hand discreetly come up and grasp Naruto's tightly, in behind the cover of the chair. Behind every great man stands an equally great woman, Tsunade thought with a smile, and turned back to focus on the meeting. We had confirmation that the smaller villagers would also partake in this, Baki explained, pointing to several smaller countries in the elemental nations. Excellent, A agreed. What news do we have from Madara? Madara is holed up in the Rain Village, Snotty began explaining. It is unclear if the Rain Shinobi are by his side, or if they are being simply coerced or manipulated. And his forces? Mei asked, intertwining her hands together. His army will be comprised of Zetsu clones. Their number is uncertain as of now, but we can expect the high tens of thousands, Snotty explained. And everyone grimaced at the numbers. Here's all the information we have on their strength, Snotty said, tossing a thick folder onto the table. My suggestion is sending bulky nin taijutsu users to the front lines with long-range cover. Zetsus are not dangerous, but they are hard to take down, Snotty informed, as they quickly read the report from the leaf. You're trying to develop BOWs against them? Mei asked with a raised eyebrow. BOW? Naruto whispered to Hinata. Bio-organic weapon, Hinata replied, and Naruto nodded. Yes, but progress has been difficult. They have an advanced healing factor, Snotty frowned. When can he start moving? A asked gruffly, leaning on his chair. My army is ready. We should move in a week, Inoki offered, as did the other Kages. If I may, Naruto said, stopping the chatter. Why not move tomorrow in a surprise attack? Catch Madara by surprise and end this before he can properly set up. You do know that the more time we take, the more Zetsu clones he can make, Naruto explained. And how do you propose we move our armies across the elemental nations in less than 24 hours? A asked with amusement. Leave that to me, Naruto replied. If I could land all of our shinobi at the front gates of the Rain Village, would we be ready for war? Naruto asked, straining the word ready. Well, a surprise attack would be good. If the troops weren't properly equipped, then it could easily backfire. A turned to the other nations' leaders and they all quickly agreed that it would be possible to get their shinobi battle ready in a few hours. It is possible. Now explain how you can move 80,000 shinobi from multiple places in the world under a day, A asked, crossing his arms in somewhat disbelief. Not a day. I can move them all in under a second, Naruto explained, and silence ensued. I severely doubt even your famous Hiraishin can achieve that, Inoki replied, stroking his beard. The Hiraishin was designed to move only the user through space. Moving large amounts of mass takes a lot of chakra, Naruto explained and stepped forward, picking the world map. A few years ago, I designed a seal that would open a tunnel between 2 points in space and stabilize this link, keeping it open indefinitely. My technique works by creating a doorway between 2 points, Naruto said, folding the map such that the leaf and the Rain Village touched. The shinobi simply need to cross this door and they will be in the Rain Village. In fact, this very technique is active in our Senju compound and linked to the Hokage Tower. The space bridge, Snotty said, her eyes lighting up in recognition. Exactly. How much energy does it take to work? Mei asked, folding her hands together. Actually, not that much, Naruto explained, placing the map back on the table. It's like friction. You need more force to put an object in motion than to actually sustain that motion. Only someone with large reserves can kickstart the bridge. After that, even a genin can sustain that bridge open for hours. Naruto finished his explanation and stepped back, waiting for the leader to make their decision. The final verdict seemed to be the same. Send word to our villages. Tell them to get ready for transport, A shouted at the shinobi in charge of delivering messages. By the way, Mifune began, retrieving something from his pouch. I took the liberty of designing a new headband for us, Mifune explained, tossing the headband across the table. The Raikage quickly caught the headband and turned it around, displaying the kanji for shinobi, branded on the metal. A grunted with a smile. I suppose we are. With Madara. Lord Madara, Zetsu called, rising from the ground. Madara did not acknowledge him, but Zetsu didn't seem surprised. I have some interesting information. Get on with it, Madara said, overlooking the cloning of Zetsus. It appears that the allied shinobi forces moved their timetable. They will strike tomorrow, Zetsu said. Madara turned backwards to look at the white clone with surprise. Interesting, Madara said, scratching his chin with a pensive look. Then we will move forward as well. How many samples have you found until now? Madara asked, leading the clone to another room filled with scrolls. A few, Zetsu answered and rose fully from the ground, bringing several rotten corpses with them. I also have samples from all the previous Akatsuki members. I took precautions should they ever be defeated, Zetsu explained. Good. I also heard what happened to my clan. I suppose you don't have any samples from worthy Uchihas around, Madara asked, never looking up from our particular scroll that was used to bring him back. Easy enough. Madara read the instructions with more care as he prepared a massive Edo Tensei jutsu. I have one that I think you might enjoy. He was Fugaku's younger son, who perished a few months ago, Setsu said with a smirk. If he was anything like his father, then forget it, Madara replied, and started waving through hand seals. He was a lost kid, easily manipulated, but he was strong nonetheless. A mid-S-rank shinobi with the Mangekyo, Setsu explained as Madara finished. Summoning Edo Tensei, Madara said, slamming his hands on the scrolls. The Zetsu clones he had on the room started becoming covered with leaves until they started taking different shapes. They will do, Madara grunted, looking at the reincarnated shinobi in front of him, waiting patiently for orders. Fugaku seemed particularly hateful towards Madara. I suppose he will do as well. The Edo Tensei is such a great jutsu, is it not? Madara asked with amusement, a dark smile adorning his face. I